So there's this one simple little word, yes. Pretty easy. Repeat after me. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very simple. And what we say at the end of a lot of our prayers is that we put this word into the law, and the law always says yes. The universe always says yes. And there's a lot of reasons why we say that. And there's a lot of reasons why we believe that to be true. And then there's the question about what am I putting into that law that the law can say yes to? Because a lot of times we don't ask questions that are looking for a yes answer. We don't set intentions that the law can say yes to. And I'll get into some details about that. So we're going to talk about this morning is the way that it works and also the way that we can use it, or how that we can work it. So in the beginning, to go all the way back, one of the ideas of a creation story, in the beginning was darkness and void, there was nothing but God. There was just the infinite, and the infinite had an idea and set an intention to bring this world into experience and said, let there be, fill in the blank, and then there was. So it was that creative process, the intention, that positive, creative, intelligent intention of I wish to have something new come into the universe. And whatever it is in the universe, well, we call it the law, we call it the principle, we call it the creative operation of the universe, it says yes and brings it into our experience. And it works on that huge grand scale, let there be fishes in the seas and there are fishes in the seas, and it works on the very subtle scale, let me have a date for Saturday night, and I have a date for Saturday night. It works on all of those different scales. So there's one answer. But then there's a little bit of nuance about how you ask the question. So I noticed when I was swimming laps a lot, it was a relatively small pool, there were 4 lanes, and when the 5th person showed up, then you had to share a lane. Pretty typical. And I found myself being very polite and saying, do you mind if I split the lane with you? And after I did this for a little while, I realized that I was asking a question where the positive response was no. Do you mind if I share the lane? No, I don't mind. But I didn't want to know. So I changed the question. Is it okay if I share the lane with you? And the answer that I got was yes. And it was a lot more, and it's like, do you mind if I share? Nah, it's okay. Or it might be, I really like having it to myself, you bastard. But I'm willing to because it's the public pool, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So rather than looking for that qualified no answer, I went to a yes answer. That's really simple. And the fact of the matter is, I was going to swim laps at the pool anyway. But there are other ways that we do that in our lives. And we either ask a question that doesn't have a clear yes answer to it, or we're asked a very simple yes or no question, and we don't answer with a yes or no. Now, this is something that people in my life do a lot. So I'll say, do you want to meet for lunch? And the answer is, I don't have a car. Well, now I know what the implications of that are, because they think that they need to have a car so they can meet me where we're going to have lunch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they have a transportation issue. But they skipped over the question. They skipped right over the question into the reason. Do you want to meet me for lunch? I don't have any money. Well, this is an infinitely abundant universe. If money is the only object, then we can probably deal with that. But the reason I want to ask that question to get an answer to begin with is if the answer is yes, I want to have lunch with you, then we can work out the details. Once we get to yes, we can work out the details. Now, there was this book that John Gray wrote, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And the interesting thing that happens is when you give an ambiguous answer to a guy, he tries to fix it so it can get to a yes or no. That's the Mars type. Now, the Venus type has a different approach. But what happens is when you ask a yes or no question to somebody who's got that Mars focus and that Mars energy, the response that you're going to get back, when you don't answer yes or no, the response you get back is they're going to fix it. Do you want to meet me for lunch? I don't have a car. Oh, well, then I can come pick you up. Now, I've just made the assumption that the answer is yes. Okay? The answer might be, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And then we're into the 4 agreements and don't take it personal, all the rest of that stuff. That's not what the talk is about today. If the first answer is yes, then all of the qualifiers can come along at the end of that. Do you want to meet me for lunch? Yes, I would love to meet you for lunch. I don't have any transportation right now, so I'm kind of landlocked at home. Oh, well, now we have an intention and we have some details that we can work out. Well, I also happen to have invited your next door neighbor who's coming to lunch, so maybe you get a ride with her or him. So there are all sorts of ways that the yes can come together, but we need to start with the idea of yes. Another way that that fuzzy answer comes along, and again, this is some of the people in my household, your mileage may vary. I say, can you get me the wrench? Or can you pick up a whatever it is, or can you do this? I'm asking for a favor. And the answer that I get is, I don't even know where the wrench is. To which I say, interesting data point. Had nothing to do with the question. Because once again, I can tell you where the wrench is, but we've just changed the subject from will you help me to a certain level of ignorance being claimed. And the question that I always run into when I get into that situation is, are we claiming the ignorance because it's going to give us something wonderful? The fact that I don't know where the wrench is means that I never have to be responsible for wrenchiness? Now, I had this experience. I was working for a national company, and we sold and installed and supported these big digital color printing presses. It's like the better part of $1 million for one of these presses. And I had a team of 7 or 8 people around the country who would go in and teach the customers how to use the press and how to clean the press and how to make the whole thing work. And they were really good, and in a pinch, they could go into a customer site and actually run one of these printing presses for them. So I had these 7 trainers and this curriculum, and they kept on wanting to teach me to use the press. And I said, no, thank you. I don't want to go through training. And and when they got offended, why you don't want to go to my class? No, I don't want to be on record as knowing how to run a printing press, because then somebody is likely to ask me to do it. I was very clear, because I could learn how to do that. I've learned how to do other things. But as soon as I knew how to do it, then I would have another question. And I wanted to maintain my ignorance in that, because then even in a pinch, I couldn't do it. And I learned that lesson actually from myself. I was working for a marketing company. We did direct response marketing. So they had a catalog, and they'd send out the catalogs. They had a call center. People would call in. This was in the days before the internet was really big. So you needed to talk to somebody in order to order these human resources products. And I was in charge of the technical operation of the design studio that did all the catalogs and the marketing materials, and I think we had a bunch of printed products that we did there as well. Well, there was this big thing. The IT department put in a new phone system, and the phones would ring in various directions and everything else. And we've got this call center in front, and the guy comes in to program the phones in the creative department, and he says, so when there's overflow calls from the call center, which of these phones should it ring on? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when there's too much incoming call volume for them to be able to answer the calls promptly, then we can set it up so that those calls will come in, and anybody in the building can take a customer call. Which, of course, if you're selling stuff, it's important to be able to do that. And I said, none of them. And the guy programming the phone was like, really? None of them? You wouldn't want any of these phones to be... And I said, no. He says, well, why not? And I said, because we're actually pretty busy doing all of the work that we have to do. And if the phone rings and the way that we answer the phones there is, thank you for calling Genial Companies. How can I provide you with excellent service today? Nice, friendly message. But I don't want everybody to have to stop doing what they're doing and provide excellent service for somebody, because we would definitely provide excellent service. There's no question we would provide excellent service, and the next catalog might not get out. So I was really clear that we did not want to be in the position of having to say yes to that. It was like, let's set up the situation so that we can do what we're doing and let somebody else do it. We maintained our ignorance. If there was overflow in the call center, we didn't want to know about it. And that's okay. but can you get me the wrench? I don't even know where the wrench is. Which of those things should I follow up on? Should I work on your ignorance of the wrench location? Or should I try once again on getting a yes out of you for helping me because I'm standing up on a ladder with a bolt in my hand? Are you busy Saturday night? Well, if you're looking for a date, the question that you're just asking there is to get a no answer. Are you busy Saturday night? No. Then you still have a follow-up question. Do you want to go out with me on Saturday night? Well, I might not want to know that you're not busy and you still don't want to go out with me Saturday. So maybe it's better to just ask the question that I want to have the answer to. Okay? And when it gets more and more down to basics and fundamentals, we tend to do it. But it's in our everyday interactions where we don't. There is a question that is universally asked and answered. It's a yes or no question, and it gets answered with a yes or no. And it goes like this: will you marry me? And everybody knows you got to be really clear about what the answer to that is. Sometimes it can be, of course I'll marry you, but it's always, that's the yes. Or, there's no way I'd marry you. That's the no. But at least that's where the question gets asked. So it happens a lot in life. So, and as I've been going through this, you guys might have thought of your own examples of times when you ask a question that you thought is a very simple yes or no question, and you get an ambiguous, off-topic, or completely distracted answer. Anybody? Anything come up for anybody?
No.
You want to share? I'm looking for specific examples. Dave?
Oh no, it happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was some this week, and I asked a person. It was an absolute yes or no question, and I forgot what the question was, but the person just went off on stuff, and I said, "You know that was a yes or no question. So is it yes or is it no?" So I had to stand that person up a little bit.
Right.
In regards to that.
And ask him again.
Yeah, is it yes or is it no?
Right. Lazy?
I was going to say people sometimes don't really know how to answer questions that directly. They're just so used to dancing around the straight up and down fact.
Yep.
Well, a lot of reasons, but it's just interesting. But yeah, I've had those experiences.
Yeah. Read it.
And I'm actually the culprit. If a person asks me a yes or no question, I want to know, well, why are you asking me first?
Right.
And let's discuss that part, and then we'll get to the yes or no.
Yeah, many times too.
Yeah. So do you start just by asking questions, or do you?
Yes, I don't answer first. I'm like, okay, wait, let's stop here and have a little dialogue, and then we get to the yes or no.
Right, and that's a great response. That's why I'd like to say yes to that. Let me find out a little bit more what you mean by the question. That could work really well. Jane, you had one?
Well, sometimes, I'm thinking, I'll ask my daughter something like, are you going to be around tomorrow night? That's a yes or no, right?
Yeah.
But it's, why?
I want.
Why are you asking me that? It's
Right.
there's a level of suspicion.
Right.
If I say yes, you're up to something. If I say no, you might, it's like.
Right. Because I might not want to do what that question is.
Exactly.
Leading up. So it's like, why are you asking me that?
Right. And that's, by the way, getting past why is a whole nother talk. Because teenagers almost invariably ask why because they want to argue with whatever it was that you were telling them to do. But that's a different story. There are a lot of ways that when we want to get to yes, we're not asking a question that can get to yes. So I've been working at this tech company, and one of my coworkers was having a problem with the technology. And so she's sitting there and she's trying all sorts of different things and she can't get it to work. And she says, "Can you give me a hand with this?" I said, "Sure." Came over to her desk and she says, "When I do this and I click on that, it's not working. So do you have any idea how this works?" And she says, and then she continues to click and show me what doesn't work, and this doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and the other things that she's tried. And I was at, yes, I can solve that problem when she first showed me what it was. So I had to wait until she took a breath. So I could say, because I wasn't going to be impolite, say, "Stop talking, we'll solve the problem." So we also need to be aware when we're asking a yes or no question, are we leaving the space for the yes to show up? Because the universe always, always, always says yes. We went hiking yesterday in Wissahickon. We took James. And afterwards, James went for a cheesesteak at D'Alessandro's. Those are awesome, good cheesesteaks. And when you go to D'Alessandro's to get a cheesesteak, you say, I want a cheesesteak, and the answer is always yes. Yes, you can have a cheesesteak. Now, I once went to D'Alessandro's, and they were closed. I actually brought my boss to D'Alessandro's. He lived in Oregon. We were out here, we went to D'Alessandro's, and they were closed. So it was kind of embarrassing. Was the answer no? Well, the answer in that moment was no. But the answer in a bigger scale is yes, I can go to D'Alessandro's and get a cheesesteak. The answer is yes. It's just not yes right now. It's yes later. Yes when the pieces are fitting together. When I set my intention to drop 30 pounds, I don't want to lose a leg. I want to do that in a healthy and comfortable and orderly process. And I'm willing to allow it to take some time so that I can have the overall experience that I'm looking for rather than rushing right into that finished experience. And we've also been over a couple of times before the trick questions that we should never ask. In my house, it's, do these pants make me look fat?
You shouldn't ask that.
Never. The answer in our house is, are you talking to me? My daughter and my wife both know that when they ask one of those questions and I say, are you talking to me? They realize, oh, I've just asked an impossible question to which there's a punishment for either answer. So the idea is to say what it is that you're looking for, to call that idea, to invoke the idea of what you want to have happen. If I want to have more prosperity in my life, if I start out with the idea of I'm going to work really hard and struggle and drop all of the fun things that I do in my life so that I can be prosperous, the universe is going to say what? Yes. And I get to struggle. And I'll eventually wind up with the money. That'll happen because that's what I have set an intention for. Do I have to include the struggle? No. In legal talk, that's the whereases. You ever looked at a contract that starts with whereas this and whereas that, where you state all of the assumptions that we're making before we get into the meat of the new agreement we're making? Well, watch out for where your whereases are. Because if you say, it's really hard to find a good, loving relationship, but I'm going to keep on trying. What are you actually asking for?
A really hard time to find a relationship.
Yeah. A lot of heartache and struggle at the end of which perhaps, or somewhere along the lines of which, there will be a happy experience. And you can do that. You are always welcome to do that. And you don't have to do that. Because we get to set the intention for what it is that we're going to bring into our lives, what we're going to create in our experience. There's a wonderful story. I've told it a couple of times before. I'm going to tell it again. This sports reporter comes up with a brilliant idea at the beginning of baseball season. He says, I'm going to do a story on how you learn to be an umpire. So they have umpire training school. So he says, that's perfect. He's going to go cover umpire training school. So he goes to the training school, and the first person he sees is a brand new rookie umpire. And he goes up and he asks his one burning question that he wants to base the article on is, how do you know whether it's a ball or a strike? Standing behind the plate, pitch comes in 90 miles an hour. There's a split second. How do you know if it's a ball or a strike? The rookie says, it's easy. Just call it like it is. Pretty clear. Okay. You call it like it is. The guy thinks that's great, and he writes it down in his reporter note because maybe there's a different perspective. So he goes and he finds an umpire who's been doing this for a few seasons because he wants to get a different idea. He says, same exact question. How do you tell if it's a ball or a strike? And the guy who's been doing this for a while has a slightly different answer. He says, I call it like I see it. Oh, that's slightly different. Because he's allowing that how he sees it and how it is might be different. So there's a little bit of latitude. He understands that he has a personal perspective, that he's involved in the process just a little bit. The reporter thinks, this is a great story. And he writes all the notes and he says, I better ask somebody else. So he goes to like the seasoned, grizzled veteran umpire who's been doing this forever. He asks the same question to the old guy who's been doing it for a long time. He says, how do you tell if it's a ball or a strike? And the umpire with all the experience says, Until I call it, it's nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. Because he's giving it its name. Up until the batter's standing there, the pitcher throws the pitch, whatever it is happens, and then nothing else happens until he decides what happened. It's nothing until I call it. So that's the invitation. That's the invitation for us all this week. What are you going to call it? When that pitch comes in, are you going to say yes? Are you going to say no? Are you going to say, I have a couple more questions to ask about that? Because you get to choose. You have the power to choose. You have the authority to choose. You get to be able to say how the question's going to go and how the answer's going to go. And know that backing you up at every moment is a universe that is very, very delighted to respond with a big, loud, and loving yes. So it is. Thank you.